Welcome to the JM Report. I am your host, GoodOlJM, and this is episode 37, coming to you from CSB Studios in Tampa, Florida, the birthplace of pro wrestling. And I usually have let's call them a clever way to open up the shows, considering what took place this past Monday night on Raw. But I'll let the thumbnail be be the best way to describe as to what exactly took place. As I'm adjusting my volume here. Raw became, or at least Vince McMahon became either, what's it called? The fourth wall breaker. Somebody get Chris Jericho on the phone. And self-aware, I think is a better way to describe it, as far as all these, well, let's call them issues that Raw's been having. Not SmackDown as much, although time will tell whether it will, I guess, pour into that. But right now it's all about Raw and their low ratings. Now, I'll get into a bit of, conversation about that later on. But let's get into Raw here, because it opened up, let's say, very interestingly, with Seth Rollins calling out Baron Corbin, who at least became the metaphorical Vince McMahon on air, as Seth Rollins pretty much literally poked the bear and placed all blame on Baron Corbin for Raw having sucked recently, although Raw has pretty much sucked for a very long time as of late, despite people like Vince McMahon himself, even Triple H going along. Well, ratings don't really matter. In hindsight, unfortunately, depending on where you stand on the argument, they're both right. And again, I'll get into that argument later on. But Seth Rollins pointing out to Baron Corbin that Raw sucked for so long, and that everything that we've complained, I've complained, everyone's complained, was brought up here, from the low ratings to the lack of talent push, the pee jokes, the urinations of Drake Maverick on Bobby Roode's robe recently, a couple of weeks ago. So Vince became a little creative and took all that drama and negativity towards the company, particularly Raw, from a year ago, if not more, and placed it all into a segment using Baron Corbin as the sacrificial lamb. So now what's based in reality is now a storyline. And instead of coming out himself to address this, everyone's concern, everyone's displeasure of the show. So now it's a storyline. And then we immediately get into, I guess, kayfabe, as Rollins afterwards would want to fight Baron Corbin in a TLC match on Raw. Of course, Corbin being the heel coward, and Rollins called him out on that, poking him in his chest, calling him a coward. The fans started chanting coward towards Corbin. So Corbin accepted, but since he being the general manager-elect, he ante-ups the match and makes it an Intercontinental TLC match. Makes you wonder why something like this would not have been saved for, I don't know. It just didn't make sense to me. The TLC match alone, okay, then they put the Intercontinental title on the line, knowing full well that you have Ambrose and Rollins match at TLC for the same title. I mean, yeah, things could have changed, and we still might expect some changes for TLC, and that's something else I'll get into later, as I'll run down the card as it stands now for TLC this Sunday. So the match was on as it was set for the main event for Raw, Baron Corbin versus Seth Rollins, in a TLC Tables, Ladders, and Chairs match for the Intercontinental Championship. And for the rest of the night, anything that the heels did in general on the show, the commentators, whenever I would tune in, I'm sure you know by now that I really don't listen to the show, I just watch it. Commentators started to yell, "It's all Corbin's fault." Just to keep drilling that bullshit into our heads that now we have a literal figure to point at as who to blame for all these low ratings. But if that's the case, why would they continue watching to blame this person now? I mean, anyway, Common sense, yeah. But anyway, the opening match for Raw this week was a rematch from WrestleMania 5 as the late Mr. Fuji teamed up with the Powers of Pain to defend the WWF Tag Team Championships versus Bobby Roode and Chad Gable, 3-on-2. Oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute. Actually, that was AOP teaming up with Drake Maverick to take on Bobby Roode and Chad Gable. And yes, I'm aware the Powers of Pain were not the Tag Team Champions at the time. But in a shocking turn of events, Roode and Gable would defeat AOP as Roode rolled up Drake Maverick for the pin and win the Raw Tag Team Championships. This was a bit shocking considering how AOP's been on a roll as of late, not really defending the title. And whenever they would, there'll be some lame finish, DQs, run-ins, or just no contest or what have you against the very same Bobby Roode and Chad Gable we've seen for what seemed like forever. And now, let's say, out of the 10 matches they had lately, 2 of them was for the title. And this time, the babyfaces finally triumph, and we have new Raw Tag Team Champions. Well, like Mr. Fuji did at WrestleMania 5, Drake was the one who took the fall, kind of saving face for AOP, as POP did back in WrestleMania 5. So, good call. Natalya comes out to cut a promo on Ruby Riott as they will face each other in a tables match at TLC. As Ruby was warned by Natalya, "You will pay for breaking my father's sunglasses." And for some reason mentioned the Montreal Screwjob, as that has any relevance anymore since 97. Anyway, so this brings out, of course, Ruby Riott and brings in what appears to be a table covered in a cloth. And we wouldn't see exactly why it was covered until Ruby cuts a promo back at Natalya, saying that when I break you through this table, you will be much closer to your father than you ever were. And it was revealed that there was a image of Jim the Anvil Neidhart imprinted onto the table. And that's what Natalya will go through this Sunday. And there weren't really too many boos, at least from what I've heard, more like oohs and ohs. And once again, to include a person that's recently passed away in reality, in real life, to include them in a storyline when they're not even around to defend themselves or to have a payback or some kind of payoff. Yeah, of course, that would be the responsibility of Natalya in this case, but why go there? Name one time that in a storyline you mention or reference someone that's passed away and not have it have a good aftertaste in your mouth. If any of you said never, then you're on par with me, because this is something that should not be touched. It's a territory that should be crossed over. And regardless of having the blessings of those involved on the deceased side, doesn't really make it okay. But, you know, I'm not them, they're not me. I have a different way of doing this. Natalya's been there long enough. Don't know. Similar to, let's say, past superstars that we heard that were afraid of their spot or their position. If they start saying no, like Charlotte Flair did a couple years ago versus Paige, when the recently deceased brother of Charlotte Flair was mentioned in the storyline after Paige pretty much talked down about him. And Ric Flair wasn't notified about that. Ric Flair's wife was not notified about that. It was his ex-wife. And they found out just like the rest of us did at the same time on live television, and they blew gaskets. It was not a pretty picture. And Charlotte Flair was basically described as someone who just didn't want to really lose her spot if she starts saying no. I guess you got to be at a Daniel Bryan, John Cena level to start saying no, hence why they decided not to go to parts unknown to be, I guess, paid in blood money. But they're still on good terms. Hell, Daniel Bryan became the champion shortly after that whole fiasco was over with, until the next show that comes across us next year. So, yeah, we're still human beings, and we have a right to say no. I really doubt in the contracts they sign, these independent contracts that they sign with the company, somewhere in English does it say, or even in the fine print, you're not allowed to say no. You have to do everything we tell you. Even if it means putting you in a real uncomfortable position, or disrespectful position, you cannot say no. That will definitely be part of the contract. I will want not one, but maybe two lawyers to go over and find a way to take that out there, because no. If it looks and sounds and smells like it, I'm going to say no. Moving on. In a rematch from last week, Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler went at it again, and it ends with Drew hitting Dolph with a Claymore kick for the win. I guess still sticking to even Steven booking or 50-50 or what have you. But Drew was not finished there, as Dolph Ziggler would try to recuperate, only to be attacked on the outside of the ring, and McIntyre will leave him laying with another Claymore kick as the referees and officials came back to break them apart. Bayley and Alicia Fox went one-on-one as the Singh brothers were trying to get involved during the match, which brought out Apollo Crews. And we will learn here that he will replace Finn Balor for the remaining tournament of the Mixed Match Challenge, and I will speak about him later on. That's why this Mixed Match Challenge, which not everyone's really following, but there's always something at stake. The original season, the finals, the winners would donate to charity of their choice, which I thought was very touching. This time around is slightly different, which again I'll get into in the TLC rundown. But anyway, oh Jesus, keep it together. Woosah. Apollo Crews comes down and tries to even things up with the Singh brothers, and even Sasha Banks, who was already at ringside, walks up to Apollo Crews and tells him to press slam her onto the Singh brothers. Now, I'm pretty sure I wasn't the only one. Obviously, the commentators didn't point that out, because why would they? And haven't seen too many other people point it out, but it was in broad daylight. Well, at least as clear as day, I should say. They were indoors to this. Well, what am I saying? I think the insanity is catching up to me. But Sasha suggesting to Apollo Crews to press slam her, and he did oblige. Apollo Crews did. And Bayley hits her. I'm sorry, Bayley. No, Sasha was press slammed. And he took full advantage too and grabbed her by the, and the name that I did not say, Sasha into the Singh brothers, and let's just say Apollo Crews had a handful of Sasha's banks. There, I said it. Bayley would win with a Bayley to belly suplex on who she fought? Alicia Fox. Oh my goodness. I think I need a timeout here. And I am back. Had a nice sip of green tea, so I think I'll be all right. Next up, we had not Bane Ambrose, but Dean, back in, I guess, Dean Ambrose tactics, as he was being interviewed by Charlie Caruso in the ring, showing him a video package of the events since Roman Reigns left, making the announcement of his illness, asking Dean what would Roman Reigns think of all this, that being of the backstabbing or the turning on Seth Rollins after the Shield breaks up, or after the Shield broke up, I should say. And Ambrose really didn't have any answer, as he just simply walked away. Next up, we had Elias taking on Leo Rush, and nice to see, finally, that they're figuring it out. Hey, we got all these cruiserweights involved with main roster participants and talent, even though it won't be a long-term thing, but once in a while to throw them out there, the 205 Live roster, that is, and to mingle with the main roster, Raw, SmackDown, which we did see some of this week, matter of fact. And this time on Raw, we will see Leo Rush with Elias, so basically a cruiserweight taking on a heavyweight. And Heath Slater donned the referee shirt for the first time on TV, as he now is a referee on, at least on television anyway, after defeating Rhino a week ago in basically in your fired from Raw match. And Rhino took to WWE.com and addressed the rumors that he might already be retired. He interestingly enough took to WWE.com and shut those rumors down, saying that he's not retired. He still has contractual obligations with WWE, especially with the upcoming Latin America tour. And the rumor was that not only he was already retired, but even after the South American tour, that he will be completely done, and that's when he'll hang up the boots once and for all. But at least I'm glad to see them take advantage of the social media paralysis and address this one rumor out of all the others that are probably a little bit more important, but this one's a little bit minor because nobody knew what was going on. And I don't know if this was in relations to how Raw opened up to point out everything that, okay, this seems to be an issue, that's an issue, let's just point it out. But does it really fix it? Not really. But again, I'll get into the argument later. So back to the match here. Lashley will run down and beat down on Elias right in front of the referee, Heath Slater, as he would try to ring the bell, but Lashley basically stared him down and pointed out not to do that, do not ring the bell. So and then it became essentially a handicap match for a little while. Both Lio Rush and Lashley will beat down Elias to a point where Lio Rush himself will break the guitar across Elias's back. And with a pin attempt, hesitantly, Heath Slater will make the 3 count as Lio Rush defeats Elias. And everything was fine. Heath Slater, that is, didn't bother to acknowledge that there was a guitar shot. And yeah, Lio wins. Alexa Bliss, who's been in charge of the Raw Women's Division, has, in my opinion, at least hasn't shown abuse of authority or taken advantage of a position, because all she's really done is just host these face-to-face or these Q&As or whatnot. That's all she's really done. And by the way, I will have an update of Alexa Bliss later on. But she's hosting this face-off, introducing Nia Jax with Tamina. Nia Jax, who cut a great promo, very, very emotional and very passionate here. And out comes Ronda Rousey. Not really much for a response, just rather she wants to get into a fight with Nia Jax right on the spot. So at this point, Alexa Bliss was all but gone. Very, very useless of her time here. She was like an afterthought, not even. So Ronda challenges her to a fight, but instead we get Ember Moon coming down, and she gets into a match with Tamina. Good segue, I guess. Well, either way, match wasn't much of it, and Ember Moon wins with the Eclipse. And we move on. As mentioned earlier by the commentators, which I'm going to mention here for the first time, that there was a TLC match 6 years ago on Raw. And here we are 6 years later, for the first time since then, that there will be a TLC title match main eventing Monday Night Raw, as Seth Rollins will defend against Baron Corbin, a.k.a. the character sitcom version of Vince McMahon. And once again, we will have Heath Slater as the referee for this one. And I'll be honest, the match itself was pretty good. A lot of offensive maneuvers by, it was mostly Seth Rollins. And so, yeah, we had a couple of close calls, I should say. And it seemed like Baron Corbin was going to win. But, of course, due to the not so good camera angles, it teased us and shielded us, at least the viewers at home, from exactly how close Seth Rollins was to Baron Corbin and how he was able to yank him down each time off the ladder, denying him the championship. So at one point, Seth Rollins will throw out Baron Corbin out of the ring, sets up the ladder in the middle. As he climbs up, he's about just out of reach, fingertips away from the championship belt. And all of a sudden, you see Heath Slater pushing over the ladder, knocking down Seth Rollins. Heath, of course, is apologetic. We didn't really hear too much of the audio at this point, but his body language pretty much says, and what I got was, that he's apologizing and that he had no choice. Maybe we'll find out next Monday night that Corbin put him up to it, because he has kids and he's got to do what he has to keep his job and do whatever it takes to keep at least this authority figure happy. So because of that, Rollins gives him a super kick for his troubles. As Baron Corbin came back into the ring, as they wrestled a few more minutes, and then Rollins would then powerbomb Baron Corbin into the table that was set up in the corner, basically a buckle bomb through a table. Rollins would just then have the coast clear, climb up the ladder, and retrieve and retain the Intercontinental Championship as Raw will go off the air, this being their go-home show for this Sunday's TLC. I guess nowadays when you attend Raw, if you notice there are, again, I'll get into this later as well, but going by the logic of the opening of Raw, you will now have someone to blame for everything that's going on. Vince, who should have been the one, and as I mentioned earlier, to come down and explain all this and say something, since they brought it up to, to our attention from social media and comments and blogs and everything that the fans have been doing, and to maybe try to fix it. We hear you, we understand your concerns and appreciate it, or things of that nature, but this is not necessarily fixing it. And not so much really to point it out back to us as the fans, pointed it out to them being WWE's creative for the past months and years now. And, well, we shall see if the ratings really mean anything. We'll see if USA may not stay, but we'll see if USA will still pay the bills. Sponsors will realize, if not already, if no one's watching, why advertise? But again, I'll get into that much later. As many people pointed out, the negatives and positives of this opening segment with Raw. But SmackDown also took place this week as the new Daniel Bryan talks down to the live crowd, whose arena looked even less than Raw's did. I don't know if anyone noticed that, but I like to look at the details, just like looking for an Easter egg in a Marvel movie. This brought up Mustafa Ali, who was Daniel Bryan's opponent for tonight, and asked him what kind of car he drives. Once again, I like to point out how cruiserweights and main event roster superstars are mingling here. So Ali answers he drives an SUV because he has a family of his own. Bryan slaps him a couple of times, only for Ali to finally fight back to defend himself, and this kicked off their match after coming back from commercial. And this match went pretty long, but it was a great match. It was a great match. And by saying that it went long, I'm not complaining about it. I just love to see these two guys go at it maybe a couple more times down the road. And unfortunately, all the good spots happened during commercial. And I know this because I'm sure everyone watched the split screen or the picture-in-picture, PIP option. That's SmackDown is the only one that seemed to do this. I think Raw did it once a couple of weeks ago or last week, which I thought, okay, finally, you have this option. You guys are on the same network. Why not do this on both shows? But SmackDown gets that special treatment that way, which is fine. There was a nice Spanish fly off the top rope from Ali to Daniel Bryan into the middle of the ring. And unfortunately, we couldn't see that full screen. I don't know if they uploaded that particular portion of the match on their social media channels or YouTube, but I'll definitely have to see that full screen instead of a little picture in the corner there. But Ali will fall to Daniel Bryan via submission. After the match, Ali was attacked by Daniel Bryan up and down the rampway, and Bryan just left him laying. As the show goes on. A rap battle of sorts, and I've heard worse, but this was pretty entertaining as the New Day, the Usos, and the Bar all tried to get a little rap going on. The Bar was the most entertaining of this as they sang or rapped a rendition of Ice Ice Baby and had Ice Ice Shamey. Even Vanilla Ice himself tweeted, "It's so bad, it's awesome," and he loves it. So a little bit of a pat on the back there from Vanilla Ice. And the Usos, it was the Usos' turn, and they pointed out when Cesaro had his teeth uppercutted through his gums last year at No Mercy, and I still can't get that image out of my head, but Cesaro was a good sport about it, as there were T-shirts made about that and sold pretty well. And, of course, this might have hit a nerve, and a brawl ensued among all six, well, it's actually seven if you count the three members of New Day, and everyone brawled as the Bar would stand tall, leading into the triple threat match at TLC for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. So maybe a little hint there what's going to be the outcome of that match. The Miz still wants to prove to Shane McMahon that they could be great tag team partners moving forward, as he arranged yet another match versus a local team from Vegas. Shane will do most of the work, I dare say all of it, and wins the match via submission. And we will see later on, Paige was upset at the referee that was involved in Shane McMahon's match with The Miz. I mean, the referee was just doing his job. I think Paige was trying to point out not to have anyone else get involved with his situation involving The Miz. Keeping the kayfabe, I don't think Paige is approving of all these matches per se. It just wasn't really pointed out, because Paige would mention that apparently The Miz charged Paige's account with 2 checks worth $5,000 each for the local talent that made appearance on SmackDown. And of course, this gets her mad. And now it seems that we're getting a struggle of power on SmackDown, so to speak, although Shane hasn't really done any kind of a heel turn as it's been expected, I dare say rumored. But Paige is yet to confront Shane about this as to what he's really doing. Of course, feeding the fact that Shane is the greatest wrestler in the world, still carrying around that trophy, I guess, to constantly remind us of that show in Parts Unknown and all the backlash it received. Yeah. But luckily, SmackDown isn't getting as much backlash as Raw is, go figure. Randy Orton cuts a promo on Rey Mysterio for their chairs match at TLC this Sunday, and we will see Rey Mysterio jump Randy from behind with, of course, a chair. Randy Orton then retreats, as a heel should, but these two will settle their score at TLC in their chairs match. Jeff Hardy teamed up with Rusev as they took on Samoa Joe and Shinsuke Nakamura. But before the match can even start, we will have R-Truth and Carmella take their dance break, just reminding us that they're still there. And there was a little bit of a miscue as Carmella began dancing and the music didn't even start yet. Kind of had an awkward expression there for a moment. But yeah, the music kicked in. Nice spot. Hey, who doesn't want to see Carmella for at least 7 seconds? I don't know. Anyway, moving on. The match finally begins as Rusev would pin Shinsuke to get the win for his team, moving forward for a possible United States title, I guess, picture with Shinsuke Nakamura, even though they don't have a match at TLC, which is quite interesting. And continuing with the storyline with Miz and Shane McMahon would confront The Miz backstage and was, of course, very upset. And Miz wanted to, as he put it, light a fire under Shane to light him up. Miz tried to shake his hand, but Shane would just simply walk away. AJ Styles would cut a promo about his TLC WWE Championship rematch against Daniel Bryan, and nothing really special there. But then we get to the main event as Charlotte Flair took on Asuka in a WrestleMania rematch of sorts, although there was no championship involved here. In a very good match, but unfortunately ended in a DQ, and Charlotte Flair would use a kendo stick on Asuka across her back. This opened up the doors for Becky Lynch to make a run in and attack Charlotte Flair and Asuka. And finally, when Asuka saw the opportunity, she reached over for the same kendo stick and beat the crap out of both women as Asuka stood tall, as they now face, all three will face each other at TLC in a triple threat women's championship match in a TLC match. Yeah, I said that. And with that said, why don't we get into the rundown for this Sunday night's TLC Tables, Ladders, and Chairs pay-per-view. As of now, there isn't an official kickoff match. I'm sure there will be, if not the day of, maybe as the weekend progresses. But as it stands right now, in no particular order, and of course I mentioned some of these already, Rey Mysterio will take on Randy Orton in a chairs match. Well, pretty much anything goes here. And both Mysterio and Randy Orton are in a position to really not gain anything. I mean, they're both veterans. To continue this, to continue the storyline, I should say, with a heel Randy Orton, and want to make things interesting. First of all, I say Randy will go over, have something for Mysterio to fight back from, and especially with the importance of a couple of weeks ago when his mask was ripped off his face. and Randy kept it as a trophy. That should be more than enough of motivation for Ray to really come back and beat the crap out of Randy Orton here. But I say Orton goes over just for the simple fact to keep the feud going with Randy Orton and Rey Mysterio. In the finals of the Mixed Match Challenge, where I mentioned earlier that last season's finals, the winners would donate to the charity of their choice, and I thought it was a really noble cause. This time around, not so much. If you haven't heard, well, first of all, the finals are R-Truth with Carmella taking on Jinder Mahal and Alicia Fox. Obviously, a Raw vs. SmackDown match here, but there's a little bit more at stake apparently, as the winning team, they will automatically be number 30 in their respective Royal Rumble matches in January for the men and women, and will receive an all-expensive paid vacation. An all-expensive paid vacation. The less said about this match, the better, or at least as far as the stipulations and what's on the line here. But I think, and this was mentioned weeks ago, I just didn't really cover the Mixed Match Challenge at all because I felt it wasn't as important as the first one was. I think that was pretty clever to get some kind of attention to see who's been competing and who's advanced and all that, especially when the winners get the number 30 spots. Don't know about the paid vacation, all expenses paid. Aren't they always on vacation technically when they're not in the ring and they're not touring? If you're not following them, if you're not following any of these guys or these women on the social medias, and you don't see them posting practically vacation spots every week. For the winners, I hope they go somewhere they've never been to before, considering that it's all paid, all expenses paid, maybe like the North Pole or the Netherlands, Greenland, Amazon rainforest, just somewhere. I mean, take advantage of it. If you're going to be booked to win this match and you're told, hey, all expenses paid, I'm going to go somewhere I've never been to before. And more than likely be back the next week on whatever brand ends up winning this match. The WWE Cruiserweight Champion, Buddy Murphy, will defend against Cedric Alexander, my apologies. And you know what? Buddy Murphy's been really tearing it up as of late on 205. I say he retains. Enough said. In a ladder match, well, usually these ladder matches have something hanging over the ring, and that's what you are fighting for to gain possession, or in some cases like a nightstick on a pole match many years ago at Survivor Series. You actually use the item against you, and I would assume, even though it wasn't mentioned, and not even their WWE.com site for TLC is mentioning this, but I would assume there will be a guitar suspended somewhere, or if not, this is just going to be a regular no DQ ladder match, and you just beat the crap out of each other with ladders and win by pinfall. But anyway, Elias will take on Bobby Lashley in a ladder match this Sunday. I think if we really want to take Bobby Lashley seriously as a heel who does little to no promo, which is a good thing, I think he has too much of a humble voice to cut heel promos. But at least he has the Ace Ventura butt talking thing going for himself. So yeah, let's give the win to Lashley here, just to take him seriously as a heel. And I know that's not a strong enough argument, but, Elias is pretty over. He has nothing to lose here. And I say go Lashley. Finn Balor is still scheduled to take on Drew McIntyre despite all the recent rumors / reports of being injured or feeling under the weather. I'll cover that later on. I say Balor's due for a win here on a pay-per-view, and he'll get the win. But at the same time, you have Drew McIntyre, who just came off beating the crap out of Dolph Ziggler, and it wouldn't surprise me if we end up seeing Ziggles make an appearance. Also mentioned from earlier, in a tables match, Ruby Riott would take on Natalya. I say let's put on more heat on Ruby Riott. Surprisingly, the rest of the Riott squad were not on Raw, at least not on television. And I see Ruby Riott keeping her promise. As sick as it sounds, having an image of someone else's deceased father across a table and you're going to throw them through it? Yeah. The Bar, The New Day, and the Usos in a triple threat tag team match for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. You know, it may not seem like it, but the titles really have been tossed around between these three teams alone ever since the Bludgeon Brothers went down with injuries. And now the Bar is once again tag team champions. Well, I would say let the Usos have a run for a little while as they've been gaining momentum and popularity as of late. The New Day already broke a record as the longest reigning tag team champions past Demolition, so really nothing else to prove there. Unless they really have nothing else for anyone, I guess the Bar will retain. After a while, these kind of matches, you see them over so much, over and over again every month. It gets repetitive, and it's not even an issue of being difficult to declare or predict the winner. It's just more like, well, logically, what makes sense? But I keep giving these people too much credit. Common sense does not exist. In the match that should main event, but we'll find out, SmackDown Women's Champion Becky Lynch will defend against Charlotte Flair and Asuka in a triple threat TLC match for the title. There are still reports that Becky Lynch is cleared from her concussion, but not cleared from the other physical injuries, such as her broken face. So if this is the case, I would expect Becky Lynch to be taken out of the match pretty early and have Asuka and Charlotte go at it, probably hence why Asuka was included in the match, just to protect Becky's physical well-being. But I expect a very, very high entertaining match here. Hopefully not too many high spots between all three women. I know Asuka will probably take a chance or two. Becky, if allowed, will try as well. We know Charlotte can fly around like the best of them, but at the end, more for concern for Becky's health. I see Becky dropping the title here. And we've yet to see Asuka with any kind of women's title run on Raw or SmackDown, so maybe her time is due. I mean, she won the freaking Royal Rumble early in the year and lost her first match on WWE TV at WrestleMania. So I say Asuka's due. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Asuka here. For the Raw Women's Championship, Ronda Rousey defends against Nia Jax in a bit of a rematch from earlier in the year. And I forget which pay-per-view it was, but that was when Alexa Bliss cashed in or tried to cash in her Money in the Bank contract. But Nia has been picking up momentum herself, really getting a lot of heat for what she did to Becky Lynch, which I'm sure will catch up storyline-wise later on, leading into the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania eventually. But to really pick up heat, Nia doesn't need the title right now. Ronda Rousey is still that attraction that they're building up and being advertised for, especially on the Raw brand. And if it's believed that it will be a match between Ronda and Becky at WrestleMania, then we got to get Nia and Becky out the way first. So curious to see exactly how they're going to pull that off. And I bring that up for obvious reasons because they're both on different brands. And the only time they'll run into each other, they could run into each other here, obviously, it's a co-promoted pay-per-view. Maybe one will cost the other one the title in their respective matches. Who knows? But point being, if it's going to be set up, and I don't mean to draft someone to the other show, that usually happens after WrestleMania. But the next pay-per-view after this is the Royal Rumble, and then it's WrestleMania. No, I'm sorry. There'll be another one in between. What do they call it? Fastlane. So they got, if not this Sunday, then either Rumble or at Fastlane, they got to put something together where there's going to be another co-branded match or in the promotional match, whatever you want to call it, between Becky and Nia Jax. So how are they going to pull it off? And I'm going to go with the idea, I literally just came on a fly, that one will cost the other one their match and probably a chance of walking away with a championship. Braun Strowman and Baron Corbin are still scheduled to have their TLC match. And again, just like earlier in a ladder match with Lashley and Elias, there's nothing really going to be hanging over Corbin or Strowman, but there are stipulations. If Braun Strowman wins, he will get his deserved rematch for the Universal Championship versus Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble. However, if Baron Corbin wins, he will be the permanent general manager of Raw moving forward. If this happens, then rumor, spoiler, if you want to cut off for the next 30 seconds, rumor is that this Monday night post-TLC pay-per-view, Kurt Angle will return to Raw and have a bit of a confrontation of sorts. And that's all the rumor is right now. Curious to see what it is, because we never got the rumored Survivor Series match between Team Corbin versus Team Angle, as a bunch of stuff fell apart, unfortunately, and began with Roman Reigns. Not that it's his fault, but changes had to be made basically around it. And once again, Survivor Series became a Raw versus SmackDown show, and it wasn't supposed to be one. And it shows the after effects, the shows afterwards really show that there wasn't a care in the world, and hence why Raw swept SmackDown 6-0, 6-0, 6-1, whatever. Still doesn't make any sense. In the Intercontinental Championship match, straight up wrestling match, Seth Rollins will take on Dean Ambrose. This feud really doesn't really need a champion or a title involved. I think similar to Lesnar holding his Universal title hostage, this Intercontinental title has been held hostage in a sense where, even though we see it every week, but no one else is really getting opportunities towards it. I mean, yes, Rollins has a feud with Ambrose, but their match is already scheduled for TLC, so we could have seen potential other matches with Rollins and other members of the roster. What happened to that open challenge? Was that only a 1 week, a one-off? Just saying, this feud does not need a title. And of course, as mentioned earlier, Daniel Bryan would take on AJ Styles in their rematch for the WWE Championship. I say Bryan retains. AJ has nothing to prove at this point. He was a champ. He was champion for over a year. Not that we're trying to break CM Punk's record, but I am pretty sure they'll still try eventually. Maybe not with Bryan, maybe not with Styles, but there'll be someone else that will definitely break that record, just so that they cannot say CM Punk's name anymore. So how about we get into that discussion about Raw ratings and advertisers and whatnot. In case you wondered, this week's Raw was the lowest ever, according to Showbuzz Daily, and they reported an average of 2.193 million viewers, down from last week's 2.285 million. As Raw went on, and especially during the main event, the viewership dropped to about 2.48 thousand. Well, 2.248,000 viewerships. But ratings don't matter. However, the argument does not stop there, as WrestleZone reported that Jimmy Jacobs, former Impact superstar and now writer of WWE or for WWE, tweeted, "Writing a 3-hour wrestling show every week is fucking hard." His words. Even Matt Jackson of the Young Bucks chimed in, saying, "Dude, 15 minutes a week is hard." Jacobs replied, "It's hard, bro." Seth Rollins ended up singing a different tune this week on Wednesday, matter of fact, as he tweeted, "That's the one thing I don't think people understand, the 5 hours of live TV every week, capital letters, add in the variables that affect the outcome, and it's modern miracle. It is a modern miracle that the shows come together as well as they do." Not sure exactly what Rollins is referring to as well as they do, but a bit out of character. Again, a total 180 from what he was discussing back on Raw, cutting that promo against Baron Corbin and blaming it all on Corbin. But now he's here basically saying that people just don't understand how difficult it is. I've been saying it for the past couple of weeks now, at least. I know how difficult it is. I really do. And it's funny, during the Attitude Era, you really only had a handful of people. Now you have a whole team. How many exactly? Well, the numbers always change, and depending who you believe, it's anywhere from a dozen to maybe 20 or 30. But I believe even Bruce Pritchard shut down that rumor that there aren't as many as people think, but never giving a straight answer, because that's comforting enough to not ever knowing what's really going on behind the scenes. We're not asking for all the secrets to be revealed. We're not asking for an updated version of exposed pro wrestling's greatest secrets or whatever. But throw us a freaking bone here. But where's the fine line? I mentioned about the ads or sponsors earlier. Will they pull away if this continues? Ratings are not what they used to be. Now with streaming services and social media that draw different kinds of numbers, but do not add up towards the TV numbers. As mentioned, also, there are more and more empty seats in these arenas. Notice how the camera opening shots for SmackDown or Raw, they usually have a full arena shot. Now it's about half. Half the arenas are shot overhead. And if you don't notice, watch back near the rampway and behind the hard camera. Those seats have been empty. Not all of them, but noticeable gaps of empty seats throughout the arena. And yes, I understand the section where the ramp and the stage are. There has to be sections tarped off or cautioned off, because that's where the setting has to go, and you probably won't get a good view anyway. I'm not talking about that area. I'm talking about the actual arena where noticeable seats have been empty. If this continues, that means less money for WWE. And if this gets worse, then you got to answer to your stock and shareholders, which is down to 73.6, by the way, from about a 95 just from a couple of months ago. I guess Vince did a smart move in cashing out all of some of his stock last week to gain about $22 million more into his pocket. For now, it's safe to say that USA and Fox next year will still pay the bills. And even they may not even have a cutoff point to say that ratings are too low or no one is watching anymore. A deal is a deal, and WWE will laugh themselves all the way with the low ratings to the bank and just get another deal when this one is finished or gets dropped off. So who's laughing now? If anyone can cue in the opening theme song to the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, feel free. It's all a business. It's all about what the contract says, usually. And one party fulfilling said obligations contractually. Ratings, times have changed. And I know that's the easiest response or argument to go to. Not that the ratings haven't been dropping. They have been. The numbers are there. And there are records to prove that. But I think it's a slick way to ignore the rating number. Whether they've been dropping or not, we're not ever going to get back or ever see, more than likely, it's not in my lifetime, see the numbers we saw during the Attitude Era, during the Monday Night War. No way. They drew 5, 6s, these crazy numbers. When the World Wrestling Federation was the only act in town, or at least on primetime television, remember, what was it, 1989, February of 89, they drew that $33 million for that 1 hour main event on NBC for the rematch of Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant for the title. It's ridiculous, unheard numbers for a pro wrestling show. And again, more than likely will never happen again. Not in my lifetime. But in all seriousness, money talks. And I guess all the bullshit we've been speaking of what we've been complaining and pointing out, making it a fourth wall for them to break on live television, is all the bullshit we've been talking. Got a bit of updates on injuries and, well, in the case of Brock Lesnar, a USADA update, as they issued a statement in the wake of confusion over the amount of publicity revealed that the drug testings that Brock Lesnar has been involved with since re-entering the testing pool, and as reported by MMAfighting.com, his number of tests went from 6 to 5, which caused some speculation as to whether any tampering have been involved. Lesnar's issues with failed drug tests steam back to his UFC 200 match with Mark Hunt, which is why there are so many more eyes on him this time around. He hasn't been the only one, and he won't be the only one. He definitely won't be the last one. USADA updates the athletic test history page of the UFC USADA website on a weekly basis. And this week's statement goes as follows. During an update on the week of October 15th, we experienced a technical issue that resulted in the information on the page being displayed incorrectly. The correct test history for athletes is 1 test, not 2. The issue has been fixed, and the testing numbers on the website are all accurate. We are still investigating the specific technical issue that led to this error. USADA doesn't play around, and the way they've been working as of late, ever since teaming up with USC, I take the word for it. USADA is not to be tampered with or messed with, especially if a fighter is trying to get his or her way. And to play with the numbers like this, well, first of all, to play with the numbers on their site and change the numbers around to a point where how many times was this person tested and what the end result was and where they stand in comparison to the previous test. Yeah, USADA will definitely get to the bottom of this and figure out what happened nearly a month ago now. But definitely take the word for it of USADA. And at least no mention of whether or not Brock Lesnar has failed anything. He's still in the testing pools for at least another month and a half. Whether or not he will fight early in 2019 still remains to be seen, because he's still dealing with WWE. He'll get his WrestleMania match against whomever, and with or without the title. More than likely, we'll see Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble in January, whether it be against Braun Strowman. But it's one of those big 5 pay-per-views for WWE, and Lesnar's basically, let's just say, contractually obligated to show up there. So we'll find out. So now let's get into injury updates, and quite a few of them. I mentioned Braun Strowman is cleared to appear medically at TLC this weekend and will take on Baron Corbin, knowing that a win will see Lesnar and Strowman go at it for the Universal title. But Strowman's been off TV in recent weeks due to the minor elbow surgery, but it appears that he will be fully healed by the time he gets to TLC. This coming from PW Insider. Also, as well as this, PW Insider reported that Sin Cara is back in the WWE Performance Center, working out after being injured back in August due to a knee injury. As also reported by PW Insider, he has been medically cleared to return to the ring as well. So it's just a matter of time. Curious to see if they'll put him up with the Lucha House Party. But August doesn't seem that long ago. But then again, Sin Cara has been seen much on television regardless. So we'll see where they stick him in. Rey Fenix, here we go, a non-WWE talent, is expected to return to action immediately after being away from the ring due to a groin injury. That's gotta hurt. Initially, it was believed that he would be out for the remainder of 2018. However, it seems as if he could return before the year is out, which is great news for Rey Fenix fans. Finn Balor, as I mentioned earlier, is going through an illness rather than an injury. This coming again from PW Insider, which is what was initially reported. Balor was sent home early from the South America tour that prevented him from performing at Buenos Aires, Argentina. But it's likely that Balor will be ready to go for Sunday when he faces Drew McIntyre at TLC. Balor was not in attendance on last week's Raw, or this week's Raw, I should say, due to his illness. However, the commentators pointed out, and quite cleverly and timing, the excuse for him not to be on Raw at all was the attack from Drew McIntyre the week before. So Balor was written off television for that incident, not the fact that he was ill. Again, very clever there. Good timing on that. Another injury has changed MLW's middleweight championship match, ladder match that is, at MLW's Fusion 0 Hour, as Maxwell Jacob Friedman had to vacate the title due to injury, and now Jason Cade recently broke his ankle and will now be replaced in the fatal 4-way ladder match for the middleweight championship of MLW by Hijo de la Park. as in La Parker. He is scheduled to wrestle DJZ the night before. Unfortunately, I do not have the results as this event took place this week, but this injury bug needs to stop because there are a few more that I still haven't gone through yet. Dakota Kai had an MRI back on Tuesday this week to check an apparent knee injury she sustained at a live event last weekend. She was noted that Dakota Kai tore her ACL doing a 6-woman tag team match that she was not able to finish, but her partners carried on as the referee threw up the X sign, teaming up with Candice LeRae and Kairi Sane, taking on Shayna Baszler, Jasmine Duke, and Maria Schaefer. And the damage has yet to be confirmed post the MRI appointment. Jason Jordan was in Birmingham, Alabama this week, getting his neck evaluated, as reported again by PW Insider here. Jordan has been reportedly working backstage as a producer since he started traveling with WWE again. This dates just about SummerSlam on or before SummerSlam. Him and Matt Hardy were reported to be working backstage as producers as well. But in the case of Jordan, he's been sidelined since his neck surgery in February, and it is still unknown at this time how long Jordan will be out of action. And if rumors are to be believed, he's been enjoying his recent backstage role as producer, and unfortunately, he is so young. I believe he's in his late 20s. I want to say early 30s. It is unfortunate. His career was cut short for now. But the angle with Kurt Angle being father and son didn't help matters either. So hopefully, if and when he does return, they can quietly walk away from that and leave it alone. Unfortunately, if you've been playing WWE 2K19 like I have been lately, that bit of the storyline is all over the game in my career mode. So yeah, it's going to be definitely in our memories for quite some time. Chris Jericho was not injured, but unfortunately his drummer was last Tuesday as Jack Slade broke his collarbone after some dumbass boarded Fozzie's tour bus in Regina, Saskatchewan. Slade was thrown off the bus, causing an injury to his collarbone, and it broke off. Not broke off, but it broke as Jericho gave chase to the said perpetrator and caught up with him, pounded this guy to the ground until the police arrived and arrested him. Now, that's the short version of the story, but however, a few eyewitnesses spoke up and had this to say. One eyewitness, the guy was on meth and berated onto the bus for an autograph. The eyewitness also said he was told he couldn't just come on the bus and had to wait outside as Chris Jericho's family was on the bus, and he wouldn't leave and took a swing at Jack Slade. He pulled Jack off the bus and Jack landed hard and broke his collarbone. This is when Jericho gave chase to the guy and tackled him. The security came and called the cops. The guy ran away and jumped the fence and got caught in some barbed wire. Ew. Until he was able to free himself somehow. And then he got into his car, the perp did, and hit a security guard. Basically a hit and run here. Cops eventually caught up with him and charged the man, and he will definitely serve some jail time. No update on the security guard, but I hope he's all right. But man, not sure if there was any confirmation of this guy being on meth, but I get what he was trying to say, the eyewitness, that either you are clearly on something or you have to be on something to bum rush a tour bus full of guys who are, physically more than likely will whip your ass from pillar to post. And one of them being Chris Jericho. So unless this guy had no clue that Jericho is a former multi-time world champion and can handle himself, I'm sure we've all heard the stories of him able to restrain and take down Goldberg of all people. So what's a little fan like this numbnuts going to go through after you injured his drummer? And by the way, wishes go out to Jack Slade. Hopefully he'll recover soon and at least be around to see the remaining of the tour of Fozzy. WWFOldschool.com, there's a mouthful, reported that the owner of Major League Wrestling, or MLW, Court Bauer, revealed on the Wrestling Observer Radio that he sent a cease and desist to the WWE for trying to steal their talent by approaching them and discussing about a deal while they are under MLW contracts. Bauer would say, "I had guys at Whale Mania approached by WWE people backstage in the green room about signing. I'm like, you can't do that. I'll give you a freebie. Don't do it again." And boom, they do it again. I had to send a cease and desist to WWE. That's called tortious interference. Bauer opened up about this again on Twitter and wrote the following: "We brought in Garza along with Ultimo Ninja this past spring. They vanished, blowing off pre-tapes to meet across town with WWE talent relations and negotiate deals. Super talented guys, but that was unprofessional and puts you in a do not disturb list. Sketchy move by WWE too." In a related story, according to the PW Torch, WWE is now looking to sign lesser known indie wrestlers. WWE officials want to sign these wrestlers before they can make a name for themselves and develop a fan base. By doing this, WWE officials believe that they can get these wrestlers signed to contracts at a way lower price than what they would ask for if there were big stars on the indie circuit. WWE continues to sign as much talent as they can possibly get their hands on, with huge amount of money that's coming in from their TV deals, $2 billion, including for Raw and SmackDown. And of course, let's not forget the money that came from Parts Unknown. So, yeah, I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago as well, that they're rounding them up. They have the money. They have, I guess, the wrestling gods' money, WWE does, to play with and sign as many people as they want. But here's the thing, and I mentioned this as well before. What are they going to do with them? Is the idea just to sign everyone away and not have them participate anywhere else so they can make a living on a local circuit or an indie circuit in these smaller territories that really people aren't taking hold of or claiming? Not officially anyway, like the NWA and the AWA and all this other stuff back in the day where there were actual territorial days, regional territorial properties. And not everyone's on television. Not everyone, but the ones with the ability, they go to streaming services, whether it's YouTube, Facebook Live. If they have their own streaming service like a Netflix, like MLW does, like a Fight Network, if you will, UFC Fight Pass. These are all potential opportunities to get your product out there. Is everyone going to watch? No, but the idea to sign away talent, this is more than just a raid. The one thing that Vince denied years ago, that he didn't raid the ECW roster. He didn't raid the NWA or AWA or anyone like that because they were all going on there anyway. Somebody might want to reopen that case because this is definitely a raid, whether you want to point fingers at McMahon himself because he's the one that makes the final choices. You want to look at Triple H. And I would defend Triple H in a sense where, okay, you're giving people opportunity, but once everyone makes it, and by everyone, we're talking about dozens and dozens of talented athletes, men and women, they'll be lucky if any one of them out of the 90, let's say, that are chosen to come out of the Performance Center or these tryouts from around the world, let's say there are 90, let's say there are 100, and you tell them you guys are ready to be on television, let's say for NXT. How many of those 100 people that you say are ready are actually going to see the light of day? How many will even get noticed enough that, hey, are you with WWE or what is your deal? It's a business, unfortunately, and I understand people's concern and disapproval of it. But at the end of the day, it is just that, a business. I was told not too long ago, I was actually reminded not to take things like this personal. But I understand Bauer's argument here. At least do everything legally. I understand that there may be a clause in these MLW contracts that do not allow talent to negotiate with WWE while under contract. And even after those are expired, there's yet another set of time that you cannot talk to specifically WWE for possible negotiations and signing with them. So, yeah, it's a pain in the ass right now, and it's a lot to take in, but it's a business. It sucks. I know that's not what everyone wants to hear, but realistically, money talks. And in time, at least as I did, learn not to take all this personal and just deal with what comes in front of you. So we shall see moving forward if WWE actually agrees or even makes an effort to apply to this cease and desist. And of course, keep an eye on these Raw ratings, which I think after TLC and the next night's Monday Night Raw, me personally, I think I'll be done with those rating numbers. I mean, they've gone to their lowest. I don't know if they're doing any damage control or in panic mode or whatever Vince is going to end up doing post TLC. But WrestleMania is coming up, and that's their moneymaker of the year is WrestleMania. This time at MetLife Stadium, they got a huge weekend in New York City competing against Ring of Honor and New Japan's G1 Supercard at Madison Square Garden, their very own territory, the home turf, if you will, for WWE. I still don't believe that for everyone to enjoy the festivities or whatever they call it, all of the available action and shows of WWE side with NXT and the Hall of Fame, TakeOver and whatnot. Yeah, let's not take a chance to compete with that. We want everyone to watch NXT. Hindsight, end up watching the G1 Supercard anyway. Only this time around, they're going to go head-to-head with the Hall of Fame. So we shall see. I will find a way to watch that G1 Super Show as well. The advantage now, as far as the Hall of Fame goes, there is a on-demand option. There will be a replay, maybe half an hour or an hour after they go off the air, and watch it on their live streaming service. So no worries there. It's just it'll come down to everyone, the fans that is, making the time to watch all of this. If you're going to watch Mania, if you're going to watch NXT TakeOver New York, if you're going to watch the Hall of Fame and the G1 Supercard or any other independent show that weekend that has streaming capabilities or pay-per-view, unless you got multi-screens in your living room that your mom and dad do not realize that's why the electric bill has been cranking up the past few months, then you got to make the time to watch all these shows, averaging 3 to 4 hours each. That's a hell of a weekend to binge all these shows. So do what you got to do, folks, and enjoy the upcoming WrestleMania weekend. I know it's far away from this point, but I think we start making plans now. And with that said, I want to thank everyone for joining me here on the JM Report. If you have any comments, please leave them down below. Like and click on that subscribe button. You can also follow me across social media as based on the description. And as always, I will be here next time for another episode of the JM Report. And until then,